Types of motion. There are many types of motion, including translatory motion. This type of motion involves movement in a straight line, without rotation or any change in orientation. An example of translatory motion is the motion of a train on a straight track. Rectilinear motion. This type of motion also involves movement in a straight line, but it can have a change in orientation. An example of rectilinear motion is the motion of a car on a road that has some curves. Curvilinear motion. This type of motion involves movement along a curved path. An example of curvilinear motion is the motion of a roller coaster as it goes through loops and twists. Circular motion. This type of motion involves movement in a circular path, with a fixed distance from the center of the circle. An example of circular motion is the motion of a satellite orbiting the Earth. Rotatory motion. This type of motion involves movement around an axis or a point. An example of rotatory motion is the motion of a spinning top. Oscillatory motion. This type of motion involves movement back and forth around a fixed point. An example of oscillatory motion is the motion of a pendulum. Vibratory motion. This type of motion involves rapid oscillatory motion. An example of vibratory motion is the motion of a tuning fork. Repetitive motion. This type of motion involves motion that is repeated over and over again. An example of repetitive motion is the motion of a piston in an engine. Periodic motion. This type of motion involves motion that repeats itself after a fixed interval of time. An example of periodic motion is the motion of a pendulum. Non-periodic motion. This type of motion involves motion that does not repeat itself after a fixed interval of time. An example of non-periodic motion is the motion of a car on a road with varying terrain. Random motion. This type of motion involves motion that is unpredictable and occurs without any pattern. An example of random motion is the motion of particles in a gas. Motion in a straight line. Motion in straight line, also known as rectilinear motion, refers to the movement of an object along a straight path or line. This type of motion can be described using various physical quantities such as distance, displacement, velocity, and acceleration. Distance is the total length covered by the object during its motion. It is a scalar quantity and is measured in units such as meters, kilometers, or miles. Displacement, on the other hand, refers to the change in position of the object during its motion. It is a vector quantity and is measured in units such as meters or kilometers. Velocity is the rate of change of displacement with respect to time. It is a vector quantity and is measured in units such as meters per second or kilometers per hour. Acceleration, on the other hand, is the rate of change of velocity with respect to time. It is a vector quantity and is measured in units such as meters per second squared or kilometers per hour squared. In rectilinear motion, the object can move with constant velocity or acceleration. If the object is moving with constant velocity, its speed and direction remain unchanged throughout its motion. If the object is moving with constant acceleration, its velocity changes by a constant amount over equal time intervals. There are different types of rectilinear motion, including uniform motion, uniformly accelerated motion, and non-uniformly accelerated motion. Uniform motion occurs when an object moves with a constant velocity. Uniformly accelerated motion occurs when an object moves with a constant acceleration. Non-uniformly accelerated motion occurs when an object moves with a changing acceleration. In conclusion, motion in a straight line is the movement of an object along a straight path or line, and can be described using physical quantities such as distance, displacement, velocity, and acceleration. The type of rectilinear motion depends on whether the object is moving with constant velocity or acceleration.